to the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter, and today I'm going to take a little look at a parcel that arrived in the post. It's not an unboxing or a mystery package or anything like that. This package was sent to me very kindly by a Bottled Imp viewer who is called Andy Craig. And, as luck would have it, he actually works for Games Workshop as a professional painter. You know when you paint the little figures? Wow, yes, he does that for a living. Imagine that. And obviously you can imagine he's had a really cool job for so many years. He's been at it for years. I'm not sure how many, 20 maybe? Forgive me if I got it wrong, Andy. And he has obviously met other illustrators and other people in the games industry. And he happened to be watching my review of Heavy Metal, the film, the animated film. Now, I didn't know too much about that. We've done a review of that, so you can check that out on the channel. Now, I was like, I vaguely knew what that was about. You know, back in the day, I just remember the poster, and it was an adult cartoon. I was too young. And I've always wanted to see it, and I did. And I happened to mention an artist named Ian Miller, and that was a connection to Andy Craig. So he then said, yes, I actually used to work and know him. And another artist who also is in this book, he sent me this book as well, so as well as magazines. This is called Rat Spike, and it's a collection of John Blanche and Ian Miller's work. And I said I really, especially Ian Miller's work, really loved his illustrations, because I first came across his work in this one, which is a bestiary. I was going to say bestiality there, that's the wrong name for it. As in, it's a collection of the characters from Tolkien. Now, the illustrations are very detailed. They're pen and ink, and I really love that style of illustrating. So I was just happening to mention that he's one of these artists that I'd really like to know more about, because I really like these illustrations. To me, they're just beautiful works of art, obviously, because it is art. And so he said, I'll send you this. Now, this is an old album, and it's, I guess from Andy's point of view, it's very cool because it's signed by the artists. Hey, there you go. And it's just an intriguing snapshot back in the 80s of where things were. These artists both worked at Games Workshop, and there's a little introduction between them, and in their own words they tell how they fell in love with art and their passion to do it, and how they struggled to get into the industry, all of that sort of story. And so it's just nice to get a little snapshot, especially when you look back on the 80s, what's that, 80s, 90s, 20 years ago, so things have changed a lot. So in here is various different collections of their work, and some really creative bits of work there are too. And it's very inspiring. I mean, I love this sort of stuff. Now, again, as I was growing up, I never really got into Warhammer or 40k, but I do remember the pictures, and it was thanks to these guys, I guess, primarily. They must have had other artists. But I just really loved this style of illustration, and it was that sort of thing where it was like you were looking at fine art, but it had goblins and ogres in. And to me, it made that seem sensible. Not sensible, that's the wrong word. Respectable, that's what I'm looking for. And legitimate and real. It's not just, oh yeah, it's all orcs and whatever and ogres. No, it's a proper art form, and that's what I loved about it. So thanks to Andy. He then also sent me, and I believe this is the first edition of Heavy Metal magazine. So the film, the animated film, actually was from this Heavy Metal magazine. Now again, I roughly knew about this when I was growing up, but I thought it was about music, and I wasn't into heavy metal. How wrong I was. It was all to do with, it was a French magazine, I think translated, I don't know how you pronounce it in French, but it actually was called Screaming Metal. So when an American company, who also did National Lampoon magazine, they translated it and they went, well, what does screaming metal mean? We don't know, so we'll call it heavy metal. And this is, it's a comic book. It's a graphic novel, if you like, and each week you get different stories, and you get the further adventures of, and it just continues the story. And so you get loads of different styles, you get different types of story, You get sword and sorcery, you get science faction, science fantasy, not science faction, science or satisfaction. You get science fantasy, where obviously they've mixed sci-fi with fantasy. Now these are very, very adult, so there's lots of nudity in these as well. And again, I kind of approach this, I wouldn't necessarily read this sort of stuff myself. I found it a bit juvenile, but from a kind of let's look back on history and see the development of kind of where fantasy, you know, the aspects of different fantasy. This is a brilliant window into, you know, what was being done back then. And just the sort of the many different artists that were around and doing that sort of fantasy back then. Nowadays, I guess it's become more and more popular, more accepted to be into fantasy, so therefore you're going to get more and more people that go into the fantasy industries, if you like. So it was just a real nice glimpse back. This is, I don't know which issue this is, but it's a very early one. Just trying to find stuff that isn't too rude. But yeah, like this one's different sort of style and very kind of word-based. And what I liked about these, although some of the stories I didn't really care for some of the stories, I like the fact that it felt very experimental. It was, yeah, okay, let's get lots of different artists, lots of different writers, let's do different things with this, and it felt very experimental, and I think that's what creativity should be. It's almost like, let's not worry, let's not try and water stuff down to sell to the masses, let's just do what we like doing, or what that particular artist liked doing, and then go for it. And that to me is where the best kind of creativity comes from. Also, they were quite, you know, I guess ahead of the curve in some respects. This particular one has an extract from the Sword of Shannara, if that's how you pronounce it. It's not Shannara. Shannara, the Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks, which then went on to become, you know, a big best-selling novel. Well, this was the first time readers got to read that. So I applaud that they didn't just put in, you know, pure comics or pure graphic novels. They put in stories as well. Plus there's verse, there's poetry, so there's fantasy poetry in there as well. So I like their attitude, and because they were pretty much people from National Lampoon, there's a good heavy dosage of comedy in there as well. So that was the connection, the heavy metal magazine, the heavy metal film, and also we did do a review of Wizards, which was all directed, they both were directed by Ralph Bakshi, and he did the animated version of Lord of the Rings. So we have explored the realms of this particular fantasy quite well. There seems to be connections, and that's what I like about this. There's that community feeling that one artist will go and work for one project and then they might go and do something else. They're not sort of particularly stuck to one particular format like painting. He's gone in, like Ian Miller in particular, he went off and he drew into he did the Wizards and the heavy metal film. And so I read that he was quite astounded about how the director made his paintings sort of come to life, and they were animated, how they could actually do that. He wasn't sure, he was quite young, I think he was mid-20s when he did those. So from that point of view, it's really interesting just to delve back into history, just to see some of the heritage that we now can enjoy, and that the fantasy genre has really exploded, thanks to films like Lord of the Rings in that respect. So thank you so much, Andy, Craig. Thank you, that was brilliant. Thank you for sending me these. If anyone else has got any gems like this of something old that they really treasure and they really think it's relevant and to do with fantasy and that you think I might enjoy as well, then yeah, obviously if you do want to send it to me, then that would be great. Obviously I'll send it back. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that little trip back down fantasy nostalgia lane. Until next time, fellow imps, remember to keep it unreal, especially if you like heavy metal. Yeah, stop doing that. That was air guitar, that's what that. Yeah.